So over the next year, I think what you're going to see is much more mainstream participation in the open data movement by governments large and small all around the world. The second advance I think you'll see in open data is a much stronger emphasis on data quality. So you'll see maybe less enthusiasm or less focus on the quantity of data sets and more on the quality of the data sets. And then the third change I think you'll see over the next year or so is government really becoming a much more active stakeholder in its own use of government data. And then, extrapolating that out 3 or 5 years, there's a number of things. First of all, I would say that this is going to be one of the most exciting periods of time in the whole history of government, all the way back to the founding of this country. You're really going to see governments become data-driven over the next 3 to 5 years. Part of that is by making data available where it's most useful in the big and small decisions of our everyday lives. Implicitly, what that means is you're going to see much less emphasis on the data catalog as a vestige of some form of the government website. So you'll see this government data is where it needs to be and is indexed by all of the major search engines. And so just as we today go and search for something on a major search engine, you'll go search for something, and if the answer to the question you just asked can be determined by government data, you will either land on a data set page that describes the answer to the question you're asking, or you'll just find this data in Zillow or Yelp or whatever consumer service that you're on. Yeah, there's a number of reasons for it. First, I would say that governments are adopting open data because it's no longer controversial. The return on investment is obvious and evident now. It really has become table stakes. Just as governments must have wrestled in 1995 with whether or not they should have a government website, they're now just recognizing, yes, of course we're going to be transparent. Of course we're going to be open with our data, and we're going to put it all online. I would add also that it's now very cost effective and easy for them to do it. This is something that governments large and small can now adopt quite easily, quite cost effectively. I'd like to say it's because we have the leading solution in the market. It's cost effective, it's quick and easy and painless for them to deploy. And we're really on to something interesting that's going on in the market, where we're seeing governments kind of change their mindset from building bespoke systems to really adopting cloud computing and adopting software as a service. So we've now got 200 or so really innovative leading government customers using our platform. New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, Boston, the real innovators and thought leaders in this whole open data movement. And what we've been able to do is really act as a design partner to our customers to be able to take the best practices from each of them and really incorporate it into the software. And so, if you are a mid-sized city, you are getting the best practices from these other cities. As a case in point, New York City spent $3 million to build an okay online checkbook. We took that idea, we modernized it, we made it stellar, we made it even better, and literally we're offering it for as little as $500 for small cities around the world. So an entirely different scale that allows us to bring the solutions to governments small and large. I think there's 3 ways that we're helping governments become accelerators of innovation in their communities. So first and foremost is we're turning data, transforming it from a really inert resource to a really strategic asset to help them deliver services better than they have in the past. So helping them leverage their own data as an asset, if you will. The second is we're helping governments get their data out of their underlying data silos and into the hands of entrepreneurs and civic developers who are building new services that are really improving the lives of citizens and residents in the communities they serve. And the third is we're really using data as a conversation piece to connect governments with the entrepreneurs and developers, and they're really creating this public-private participation, this model for delivering these new services in far more cost-effective ways than they've done so in the past. Yeah, if you think about it, transparency is the foundation of trust. We're seeing more and more people have a window into the way government is operating, and that's leading to much greater trust by citizens and the folks who are looking at and analyzing and trying to understand and comprehend what government is doing. And if you look back at the major trends over the last 50, 60 years, trust of government peaked in the mid-60s. In about 1965, there was a survey conducted, and 73% of people trusted their government. And that bottomed out in about 2009 at 20%. Only 1 in 5 people trusted their government. But what's remarkable is you're seeing that number is coming up now. We're now at about 24, 25% just in the last 5 years. And I think now, through transparency, through open data, we're seeing how government operates. We're seeing how elected officials are voting. We're seeing how government is making decisions. And what we're finding out is government, by and large, is doing the right things. They're doing exactly what we thought they should do and what they should be doing, and that is just creating an enormous new level of trust that we have in our government. So Socrata runs this cloud-based software as a service model, hosting the open data initiatives of literally the 200 largest governments in the world. So here's a little secret. 50% of the data in our cloud is private, and the only consumers of that data are governments themselves. They are having their senses awakened by this whole idea about open data, and it's allowing them to recognize that they've been sitting on this asset for decades that they didn't even realize could help them make better decisions. And so now they are adopting this evidence-based decision-making mindset, putting their own data to use. I mean, great example of this. Look at this really well-regarded national program in the state of Maryland called StateStat, run by Governor O'Malley. I mean, here is a program where the government has decided to become evidence-based. They decided to become fact-based in the way they run government, and people in Maryland love this program. And in fact, Maryland invited us to become a design partner to effectively productize StateStat, to move it onto our platform, and to dramatically lower the cost and offer this to cities, counties, states all over the U.S. and all over the world. And now, more than 50 or 60 governments have adopted this same StateStat-like model and have become evidence-based, have become fact-based in their decision-making in a way that they could never have possibly done in years in the past. Where I would start is this idea that data is far more a connective tissue than we had ever thought it would be. So it ends up that data connects governments to governments, it connects governments within a region, it connects governments to entrepreneurs, it connects governments to citizens. So they are all united and all connected around this common body of data. The second idea that I would touch on is this idea that governments want to share and compare and benchmark data with each other. So it just so happens that the problems, and probably more importantly the solutions to those problems, are similar in similar-sized governments around the world. The problem of rodent infestation in Paris and in New York City and Chicago and Los Angeles have similar solutions. And so having all of these governments connected on one network where they can share their data, compare their data, benchmark their performance against solving some of these problems, and ultimately disseminate those best practices really has an advantage, where we can see speed of delivery and efficiency of delivery of these solutions around a common network. The last area that I would touch on is one of scale. So if you think about Zillow as an example, Zillow is today gathering data from more than 1,700 distinct government entities. And they're spending enormous amounts of time and energy and resources trying to get that data into a consistent form. And so when you think about the possibility of all those governments being on a network together, and that data having some sort of a standardized look and feel, you can understand how Zillow then can take that data and get it into these services that regular folks, we citizens, rely on a daily basis in a far more efficient, far more cost-effective manner. And then you can actually extrapolate where they're going to they're going to move beyond just the tax assessor data like they're getting today, where they say, well, what goes into buying a house? It's certainly the value of the home. I've got to stay within a budget that I have to live within. But there's also how good are the schools, how safe is the neighborhood, how close am I to the public transportation system. All of that comes from government data. And so if we can make that available on this ubiquitous open data network, we can now get that kind of data into the decision stream where we're making the big and small decisions that impact our daily lives. I think open data ultimately is really going to have this enormous impact on society. Literally, I believe it's going to be one of the most important economic and social endeavors of the 21st century. And I think the impact of open data is really going to boil down to two simple ideas, two simple ideals. The first is just democracy is going to be dramatically better because governments are more transparent and we citizens trust our government far more than we ever have. And the second is just around economic prosperity that is enabled by governments making all of this data available. And if you think about it, 2 data sets alone released by the federal government of the United States, weather data and GPS data, now account for more than $40 billion of economic activity. When you multiply and amplify and extrapolate that across every government around the world, you can foresee not 2, but 2 million, 20 million, 200 million data sets perhaps. And it's easy, it's really simple to understand how McKinsey can come up with a number like $3 to $5 trillion of economic impact. I know that's going to happen. You're going to see jobs created, companies created, even entire industries created on the back of open data. Wow, interesting question. I would hope that the legacy for Socrata could be synthesized down to 3 primary ideas. The first is that Socrata is this mission-based company that helped spawn a new era for data-driven government. The second is this is a company that had the foresight and vision to invest its time and resources and energy in building out the open data network so that government data could be compared and shared across jurisdictions, and so that the performance of government could be benchmarked from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And the third is that here is this technology startup 2,500 miles away from the Beltway that decided to try to disrupt an industry that really needed to be disrupted and transformed. And we had the ambition to go after this gigantic behemoth market and try to make it more innovative and more data-driven than it had ever been.